Coming up on Triangulation, I sit down with Joel Sadler of Piper, and we've got some really cool stuff to show you, stuff that's going to get kids involved in coding and assembling computers. That's up next on Triangulation.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Triangulation, episode 385, recorded Friday, February 15th, 2019. Piper founder Joel Sadler. This episode of Triangulation is brought to you by Capterra. Find the right software for your business with over 750,000 reviews of products from real software users. Check out Capterra's free website to find the right tools to make 2019 the year for your business at capterra.com/triangulation. Hello, welcome to Triangulation. This is the show where we sit down with some people doing amazing, crazy, awesome stuff with technology. I love doing the show. I'm Jason Howell, and I feel like kind of right now, it seems like one of my beats here at Twit is taking a look at technology and how that's intersecting with the classroom, and specifically how technology, products, games, whatever you want to say, Minecraft, kits like the Kano magic coding wand, the Harry Potter wand, all these things are coming out right now that are really inspiring children to kind of get familiar with the concepts of STEM and STEAM and programming especially, and in ways that I know when I was a kid, it was a lot harder. It was less attainable, less served up in an easy to learn fashion, which, you know, meant that you either got it or you didn't. And if you didn't, it'd be really hard to connect with it throughout, you know, your childhood and throughout your life. Now it's so easy for kids to get involved with this stuff. So I'm super thrilled to welcome to the show founder of Piper, Joel Sadler. Welcome, Joel.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Absolutely. It's so great to get you here. I can't remember when it was. It was sometime in the last couple of months where this idea of the Piper computer kind of flashed in front of me. I can't remember if it was in an email or it was a news article that I read or whatever. But when I saw it, I immediately thought, this is such a interesting concept, but it has to be an amazing way for kids to really, you know, kind of cut their teeth in what computer science is all about. It's such a now product, and I love what you guys are doing with the Piper.
Awesome, appreciate that. And you probably saw an image of a wooden computer flashing up on the screen. You know, we wanted that spark to be something that was surprising. Yep. Technology that's in an unexpected way, but approachable. When have you ever seen a wooden computer that actually plays a game that your kids love?
Well, you know, what it reminded me of at first, what was the name of the very early Apple computer?
Yeah, the Apple ones that were in a wooden case.
They were in a wooden case, and I was kind of, as my daughter, who's 9, as we were assembling this, putting it together, that was kind of the image that I had in my mind of, like, you know, this like perfectly crafted wood as the case that surrounds this, you know, this high amount of technology on the inside. What a cool, tangible approach, you know. And I'm sure the Apple founders, you know, they did that probably out of necessity because that's just what they had. And
that's very similar to how we started. This was basically out of necessity.
Yeah,
you know, it's what we had lying around. We had a laser cutter, access to that we could cut what we had. It wasn't plywood. We had this very cheap MDF board, and the first prototypes ended up resonating so much with kids that the prototypes ended up being much like you see here in the product. Yeah. And that wood is really important for our mission because it sort of signifies it's a material of craft, it's warmth, it's aligned with things like the maker movement and design. And so we wanted our product to reflect that. And, you know, having kids get inspired to dive into technology as something that they can modify, right? They can take a screwdriver or a hacksaw or a laser beam, cut through and make the world, you know, the way that they see it. And so we definitely wanted that first moment, that first picture to be something that drew them in and saw technology as something they can shape.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, we should say, you know, because it's a wood case, it's also perfect for now because there is a lot of attention around green, you know, being green, using renewable materials and that sort of stuff. If, you know, there are so many pieces of technology that I can think of that are absolutely not in any way, shape, or form green at all, yet, you know, they're everywhere and we rely on them. So that's also kind of a nice lesson to teach children as they're building this too, right? Like you don't need a big hunk of of plastic to be the case and be around forever and ever in some landfill somewhere. It can be something that feels just a little bit more neutral, more renewable.
Renewable, and I think what's exciting is kids can look at the kit and envision where all the parts come from.
Yes.
Technology, you look at an iPhone today, it's sort of sealed in a black box. It's hard to sort of see the parts and get a sort of understanding of how the bits and pieces work together. So, when you see the wood case, it's an approachable moment to come in and see, I can see where that wood came from, and then get to the next level. You see the circuit board, you see the battery pack, there's wires. It's all about scaffolding the experience in a gentle manner, so we can sort of have everyone have an exciting experience the first time.
Yeah, I love it. So we're gonna spend some time talking about the Piper. I thought before we kind of get into the details around this awesome computer, we've had so much fun. I'm so stoked that you're here, because my daughter, like, she basically is like, oh my goodness, you're meeting the guy who created this thing, so she gets that experience. I was like, what question do you have for him? And she was like, could you ask him how he did it? So we're going to talk about that. That'll be her overarching question that she'll want to have answered, and we're going to dive deep on that. But I thought we would start off kind of with your background, because you have a really cool story that leads up to Piper. Piper is kind of the last 3 years, I'd say, of your life, right? But you've done a lot of things prior to this. You grew up in Jamaica. And I know that Lego was really close to your heart while you were in Jamaica. Kind of talk a little bit about kind of building, that experience being in Jamaica, and the kind of the importance of Lego to your development.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up in Jamaica. I just came here for college, and it was, for me, having access to these toys that were creative, Legos and Lego Mindstorms and Meccano, which I think is a Erector set here in the US.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
These were constructive toys. You build things out of parts. Meccano especially, it had screwdriver, nuts and bolts. We actually use the same screws that and nuts that are in a Meccano set.
Okay.
That was a very mechanical way to get exposed to the world, and it taught me that you can dream, and if you want to make an airplane or a spaceship, that you could start to build the pieces together to shape them. And then at that time, the Legos and Meccano started to get electrified. So not only could you create the physical forms that you could dream up, you could start to make them come alive, make them be interactive, have them move. And that's the beginnings of the early computer revolution as well. So those early days taught me a little bit about how important those early childhood experiences were. Like, what's the first experience you have with a computer, building a computer, or building a electronic set out of Legos? I found that it was really pivotal for me, being inspired to go on a career to make things for people. And also growing up in Jamaica, a place with less resources, that taught me the mindset of, you don't need a lot of money, you don't need a lot of resources. This is a universal thing that every child on the planet gets exposed to educational toys in some form. And that was the kernel of sort of founding Piper. It's like, what are those early childhood experiences that we think every child should have to get them on their way, in life?
Yeah, and I know that it kind of, a part of the Piper experience for me has been, as a father, working with my daughter throughout the whole experience, right? Like, she could probably do this all on her own. She's very familiar with Lego and following, the kind of instruction book to put this piece and, kind of rotate things around so that they match the blueprint and everything. But it was really, I know that she enjoyed having me there, because that's what kids want, right? Like, they want time with their parents, kind of shared experiences, and I enjoyed being there. How involved were your parents with this kind of development that you were undergoing as a child around creating with Lego, and I imagine eventually that kind of transitioned more fully into the technology direction. But were they there working with you in this way? Is that kind of why that was behind
I think
this?
I had savvy parents who understood that rebellious child that might be like me, that might have been a bit bored with traditional school, needed that stimulation. My dad was a civil engineer, so I had that bias. I could see I could see the world of, you know, imagining things and them taking shape, bridges and so on. So I think the seeds of going from sketches on a paper, in those days it was pencil and paper drafting, which I had to do in school. I could see how those actually translated to buildings and bridges and in the community. So that was an important backdrop, and my parents definitely, you know, took time to find the Legos and Mechanos of the world. That Meccano set I mentioned was, you know, I think I was age 7. I saw another guest on this show that even mentioned the same set. There's a pattern here where if you have parents who are thinking about, you know, what are the experiences I want to enrich my children's lives with, to give them awareness. That was certainly the case for me, and you know, I think with Piper, we're hoping that then becomes the next kind of option that gets put in.
Sure. It certainly makes it obvious to a child's developing mind that this is possible, right? You know, it's like the conversation we were talking a little bit before the show. I had a conversation with my daughter Lucy while we were putting it together, and there was just that one moment where she looked at me and I was like, "This is really cool." She was like, "Yeah, I'm building a computer right now." And before that moment, like she had, like, obviously there's a first time for everything, but I never in a million years would have thought, oh, yeah, my 9-year-old, you know, knows what it's like to build a computer. But that's exactly what you're doing here.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah,
so
we want to
cool.
convince not just the kids that they can build a computer, but also their parents and their teachers.
Sure.
You know, we watch kids every day build their own computer, so we know that anyone can do this.
Yep. And
so it's as much for the kids as it is, you know, for the parents to see the potential in their children that we're unlocking.
Absolutely. So then you get older, you go to Stanford, MIT. Pretty prestigious places and directions. You wrote a thesis called "Enabling Novices to Prototype Electronics," which, I mean, that appears to be, you know, maybe there was a foundation prior to Piper, but that appears to be directly tied to where you ended up. Even though we'll talk a little bit about kind of the kind of points that you experienced between then. But would you agree? Was that thesis like really the foundation for Piper?
Yeah, I think, you know, having built a bunch of products to help people, you know, eventually the main question on my mind is, how do we scale this? How do we get more people involved in creating things for others, a more diverse crowd of product creators? And so at Stanford, I got obsessed with the idea of, you know, how do we enable anyone, whether they have any technical experience or not, how do we enable them to create their ideas? And so not just the engineers that I had surrounded, you know, at MIT and other places.
Sure.
You know, I wanted to see, you know, biologists jumping in and who were working on the cure to cancer and them creating solutions to what they're seeing in their laboratories. And eventually working with kids, seeing that they had their own ideas as well, that, you know, perhaps become the seeds to solve our big problems. So yeah, my exploration at Stanford in that PhD was really about going out there, talking to everyone that I could find that sort of had ideas, whether they were kids or nurses, playing with the tools that they had, whether they were Lego blocks or you know, things that we've eventually put into Piper, like really affordable microcomputers, and just understanding, you know, what's getting in the way here, what can we do about this to make this turn this experience into something that scales, that becomes something that perhaps becomes a standard way that people get exposed to technology. So that definitely was the early work that led up to a lot of the principles we put in Piper.
Yeah. Well, and also, you know, I watched your TEDx talk about the Jeopardy, and really kind of what I walked away from that with is that it's obvious to me watching that presentation and where your work has led to, that you are at your heart, you are a creator's advocate.
Yes,
I mean, it seems like your big mission is to, like you say, really kind of make or help people realize that they have the ability to create. A lot of people, I think, pigeonhole themselves and say, well, I'm not creative, I don't know how to do that sort of stuff, I don't, you know, or you know, maybe they do, they just haven't had some sort of a way to segue into it, which is exactly what Piper does. Yeah,
and that early work, you bring up the Jeopardy. That was a, you know, low-cost prosthetic that myself and some students designed while we were studying at Stanford. It ends up being, to this day, something that's fit on people with missing limbs every single day. And
that's amazing.
We started as in our 20s in a dorm room with cardboard and scissors and prototypes and idea. Saw that it affected people's lives in a really deep way, and these were very formative experiences. I don't think myself or others were particularly special in the sense of geniuses. We just worked hard, we prototyped, we listened to what the users had to say, and that really convinced me that anyone can jump in here and do this. And then I turned my attention to what do we have to do here to sort of amp this up, to have creativity that we had experienced be for all. And so with Piper, that was our idea, not just sort of building mechanical things. We started building in, two very important other pillars. With prosthetics, that's a pure mechanical object in many ways. But this world of sensing, computing, artificial intelligence, programming, this is the world that was emerging at that time in a way that anyone could actually then start to afford these things like the Raspberry Pi at the time, which was this $35 credit card size computer, which is actually still in our kit.
Which is such an amazing thing in and of itself. Like what it has done for computing is just remarkable, and yet. And I think I just saw that there's news that sometime probably next year we're going to see the next big, very eagerly awaited major update to the Raspberry Pi. It's still going to be $35 expected to be. So it's this low cost, highly powerful computing environment, which again it just means you bring in more people. You make it more accessible for everyone to get in on this crazy kind of makery. Coding, a sort of thing that's happening right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the trend we're seeing that's enabled a lot of this, is that the technology is affordable for everyone now. What's in your iPhone, the individual pieces inside of there, you can go on a website right now and buy almost every single part yourself for an affordable price. So the missing link was actually designing an experience that even a child could go through and have a positive experience. It was a user experience challenge, not so much a technology bit. The technology is here and it's just improving more and more. What we focused on at Piper was how we actually leverage that in a way that you package in a box and you have that magical experience that you mentioned, that your daughter said, hey, I can build a computer, because that's the spark that years later, kids look back and say, hey, that was the thing that convinced me that I could go in that direction, whether they wanted to go into engineering or medicine or law, whatever their chosen profession is. We want that magic spark, and the technology was an enabler of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is what we have here is the second version of the Piper computer kit. So there was a part one. Yeah, this is the sequel. And that one you initially launched on Kickstarter, right? What was your team like at this point? How much time did you spend on it prior to the Kickstarter, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, that was a wild experience.
Sure.
We kept a lot of, if you go back and look at the the original Kickstarter, things like a wooden computer that you build, we preserved that all the way throughout. Yeah. Those days were scrappy. We prototyped, every day. We talked to a lot of kids. Actually, originally, it wasn't clear that we should even have kids make the computer. We didn't know if kids could actually come out the other end with a working computer. So, with the daily sort of iteration, it was really fun. We tweaked the kit until, we could, in a single setting, sit down with your average sort of 7 to 12-year-old and then have them sort of successfully build it without any help. So we sort of made it easier or harder. We didn't want it too easy. This wasn't about something that you snap together in seconds. We wanted kids to feel, yes, I am building a real computer. And so those early design, sessions were really important to tweak the balance so that you come out with that positive, that confidence building. Because what we wanted to avoid was when we started hearing things, especially around ages 11, 12, hey, I'm not good at math, or I'm not creative. You start to hear these things, especially at those age ranges. We wanted to get in as early as possible, convince everyone, every young child that this is something they can do. And those early Kickstarter days were, the seeds of that. They were really fun, and and you could see what persisted all the way throughout that.
Absolutely. And were you hearing from people who were getting involved in the Kickstarter at the time, features that they, oh man, you know, this would be really cool if it did this, and then it kind of went into your feature bank?
It was very collaborative. You know, part of our product, you know, the heart has this Raspberry Pi edition of Minecraft, which is a really popular, at the time, we learned that from kids. The idea for, you know, the core of Piper in the software was coming from kids telling us, hey, if that Raspberry Pi, if that's a computer, can it play Minecraft? And I'd never heard of it. Because
be real, Minecraft is the world for a whole lot of kids.
yeah, and I had never heard of it before, and so they brought this up time and time again until, you know, we finally sat down and started playing through Minecraft and found out that it was the perfect environment for representing the 3D world, which is great when you need to instruct kids about how to wire things up. So it had that tie-in that was really important in the beginning.
Yeah, and I have to say, so we were talking a little bit before the show about Minecraft, and both my daughters, 5 and 9, they definitely fall more into the Roblox camp than the Minecraft camp. But I have a really good feeling that my older daughter, especially because she's the one that's had more interaction with this so far, she's like right in that sweet spot, I think, of the age range of the Piper computer. She's 9, is going to come out of this like with a much bigger appreciation of Minecraft. And I think what I thought was so cool, what I feel is so ingenious about this product, is that when you're utilizing Minecraft, obviously you're pulling the children, you know, into a learning environment that they already like. So you've eliminated this like, oh, well, now I have to learn this new thing that's super complicated, you know, all these coding blocks or whatever. And then the experience itself replicates certain pieces of the hardware, you know, within what you call story mode. So for example, there's a part in Minecraft where these pins right here are represented, and you show the colored wires extending off of them. And the challenge, eventually you figure it out, is to actually in the real world grab those colored wires connected to those pins. And the second you do, you see the energy kind of pulsing in the Minecraft screen. And you realize that the Minecraft is really walking you through these foundational elements of building a computer. And once you do that, of course, then you touch these contacts together once it's plugged in, and now your character magically moves forward. You've just created, through the experience itself, the ability for your character to navigate it. And it's kind of a weird mind-twisting thing, because like we were talking about, it really melds or kind of creates a connection between this weird virtual world and the real world in such a unique way, and it's such a great way to learn. You know?
That's a beautiful description. You know, part of having a familiar form that kids, you know, we call it sort of the Trojan horse learning. You know, taking something kids are already obsessed with, then combining that with the foundational ideas. You know, in a 3D world, whether it's Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite, you know, what we wanted to do was align with something that kids would be sort of excited to jump into, and then once they've jumped in, use that time to expose what we think are the foundations. So what you described there was sort of, you know, how do you actually place this wire from point A to point B? Any 3D environment is a great way to walk kids through, you know, what used to be abstract schematics is now a very sort of, you know, video, audio, animated, guided exploration that's a much easier entry point. And then, you know, later on gets more and more complex. We love the narrative of learn to code, for example, and we see a lot of great coding tools out there. But what we find is when you start with putting a wall of code in front of a child, or ask them, you know, even when they're sort of these visual drag and drop programming environments, which we do have in our kit, we find that it's hard to connect those with ideas that kids will sort of care about initially. And so what we've done with Piper is build in this hands-on experience, so it's sort of engaging from the beginning. It had the hook with a 3D world that they'd be familiar with a game that they'd be familiar with. And then once you've progressed through the story mode, then we expose, hey, if you want to sort of make that LED blink the way you want, here's some coding blocks that you can use to modify. So it's it's coding, but exposed in a physical way. And we found that that's been a much more successful journey for us to get kids into the world of what I call creative computing. Not just computing, but what you can create with it.
Yep. And the coding blocks, like you said, there is Piper code, and then there's the Piper story mode, right?
Yeah.
So there's a few different elements that you can get into within the computer, depending. Oh, and this is a good example of well, I think this is the first level, right, where you have to kind of connect. You can kind of see that there's the energy is trying to kind of pulse through.
Yes.
It kind of gets you familiar with this concept that electricity currents travel in a certain way, and you have to kind of build a conduit in order for it to pass through entirely. And as you learn these concepts, you go into another level, you add the right thing, and boom, great, you've passed the level, and Piper walks you through. And then at some point you get to the point to where you're creating these in the physical realm and not just the virtual realm. I love it, and we're having a blast with it. We're going to talk more about Piper Computer Kit 2 in a moment, because this is what you've basically just announced within the last couple of weeks, and that's what I've been playing with. If you can't tell, I've been having probably as much fun as my daughter playing with it. But first, let's take a break and thank the sponsor of this episode of Triangulation. This episode is brought to you by Capterra. It's 2019. So if are you still doing things the old way at work? Maybe you're a little outdated on finding your software. You can start the year off right by replacing that software that isn't working for you anymore. Maybe it causes you angst, agony, slows you down. There might be better solutions for you out there, and maybe you even know of one right off the top of your head. Well, you can find software that you love that fits your business needs at capterra.com/triangulation. Capterra is the leading free online resource to help you find the best software solution for your business. With over 750,000 reviews of products from real software users, you can discover everything that you need to make an informed decision. It's all laid out in a sensible way, easy to find, easy to search. You can search more than 700 specific categories of software, everything from project management to email marketing to even yoga studio management software. It's all in there, tons of categories, so you can find exactly what you're looking for. No matter what kind of software your business needs, Capterra makes it easy to discover the right solution, and most importantly, fast, so you aren't wasting time looking for it. You can join the millions of people who use Capterra each month to find the right tools for their business. Check out Capterra's free website. All you have to do is visit capterra.com/triangulation. You can find the right tools to make 2019 the year for your business. That's capterra.com/triangulation, capterra.com/triangulation. We thank Capterra for their support of this episode of Triangulation. So what would you say? So we've got the Piper Computer Kit 2, Electric Boogaloo. What would you say is the difference between the first kit and the second kit? Is it a few kind of upgrades? An upgrade in screen size, I think, is one thing that I saw. What were the big requests, and what were you able to fulfill? Going to the.
So it was really exciting. One of the things we started seeing was a lot of schools sort of reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, can this be part of our STEM solution? Can this be part of our makerspace? Can this be part of our after-school coding program?" And so as we started going in and working with more districts and more teachers, that they had certain requests. And so for learning to code, screen size is very important.
Yeah.
So, one of the big things is we've expanded the screen size so that it allows more real estate when you're learning to code. We have Piper code in there, which is our visual programming language. But, you could put Python or any other programming language that you're already working with. Larger screen size, it's robustness came up quite often in the classroom. So what teachers love to do is at the end of the semester, we have a curriculum that we ship for educators so that they have lesson plans. We offer training in addition to the kit. That was a big learning, was that for meeting the needs of educators, it had to be more than just handing hardware. So training and curriculum were an important part. And in that curriculum, at the end, the last thing that's done is you disassemble the kit. The children, they work 2 to 1. They usually sort of collaborate. We love them to work together, and at least in pairs. And you take apart the kit, and then you can hand that kit to the next group of students. So it's much more rebuildable. Every screw and nut that's in the kit, you can disassemble, reassemble over and over. That's important for us to increase access.
Yeah. None of the screws are screwing into wood itself.
That's right.
It's all going into some sort of a metal receiver.
Exactly.
Which makes it very easy to disassemble and not like ruin the rivets or whatever inside a drilled piece of wood.
It's all reversible. So we redesigned the kit to support that better. And then also for extended playtime, we've made it so that you could plug the Piper into the wall. That was something we hadn't thought of initially, but was important in a setting where you wanted to run the kit for maybe 3-4 hours at a time.
Sure.
So these things all sort of add up to a much more robust solution for educators, and then for the creative aspects, having a larger screen real estate is very important for us to enable more design, right?
Yeah.
Minecraft's a great tool for 3D modeling, but Piper is also great for learning about circuits and then connecting that with physical programming.
Yeah.
So we're really building that ecosystem of creation across physical, electrical, software, and the new kit supports that beautifully.
Yeah, that's my daughter on the screen right now building. I was trying to capture it as we were going along, and she was just having such a blast. Like, it really, the comparison to Lego is so apt, because I mean, now when I think about it, like how many things has my daughter Lucy built, and what, like how has she created those? And by and large, I would say in the real world, it's largely it's Lego. It's following an instruction manual of some sort, and actually the Piper does ship with a really cool, I'll put it on the overhead, a really cool kind of blueprint approach. And I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like, I was able to kind of help my daughter Lucy in the kind of the flow of the directions. All right, this is the next page, this is the next page. But really, I just kind of challenged her to kind of look at these things and be like, all right, well, is that facing the right way? Should that notch be up there or down there? And kind of follow the instructions on the blueprint. And it, like you also said, and I think this was important to our experience, it wasn't the kind of thing that you could just throw together in 20 minutes. It took a little while. It took some time. But what I thought was so wonderful is that she never got bored. You know what I mean? She really wanted to see this thing created. And so she stuck with it and made it happen. And she was able to.
Yeah, and I love that you show the blueprint there. I mean, we wanted to show a little bit the real process of solving problems. And building a computer is complex. And so we wanted that experience to reflect that. And we know, you could see from your daughter, she was able to do it. And we know that any sort of child is able to do this.
Yep.
So we wanted to just help, but not too much, because real world is about solving ambiguous problems, and the blueprint reflects those hints, and everyone's able to get through it in the end, and feels really proud at the end. If it's too easy, it doesn't feel like you're doing the real thing.
Totally.
And that's not just physical building; it's the same for electronics and the same for programming. Everything in here is there's no sugar coating. The wires, the LEDs, the buttons, they are the same buttons that you would go into from the manufacturer and buy, and the same tools that we use as engineers. They are the real tools, and so that's a part of our sort of authentic core values, is expose the real world as much as possible down to its core, and then create those experiences like that guided blueprint that just gently nudge people along in a way maybe they didn't realize in the beginning that they had it in them.
And I believe I saw, I found somewhere, read an interview where you had mentioned a kid or someone had created, like when I think of like modularity around the system, I automatically go to the technology aspect, because it is a Raspberry Pi, and there's so much creativity happening around the Raspberry Pi. But I think I read that you mentioned that there was somebody who had created like a carrying handle so it could be carried like a laptop case or something like that.
Yeah, kids have all kinds of ideas about how they, we wanted it to feel open, like, oh, I could go in and modify that. One child felt very strongly it should have a handle and a carrying case, and 3D printed a handle and screwed it in. So we love that. That's exactly how we know we're kind of moving in the right direction, when we invite that sort of, direct creativity and sort of solving problems in a way that, they felt that's what they wanted to modify. We want to see more of that. And the Raspberry Pi, as one of the most successful computers of all time, is also a great place where there's lots of projects that people pull the Raspberry Pi out of the kit and then are then able to sort of build their own smart device that, you know, instead of having this whole shell of a computer, what we're really excited about is what people do next after that. Now that they feel confident, they can remove the Raspberry Pi, plug it into, you know, their own monitor, or
keep it plugged into this monitor.
Keep it plugged in.
The thing works plugged into this monitor. Just swap out that SD card with an micro SD card that has a different image on it.
Yeah.
I think I just saw news a couple of days ago that now like Windows 10 can be installed on a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. It's
like
the world of computing.
You can do so much with this dang computer. It's crazy.
Yeah, and we just wanted to show people like what the potential was.
Yeah.
And so it's really the steps afterwards that are really the things we're proud of.
Yeah.
Kids sort of going beyond and inventing in open-ended ways.
So obviously Minecraft Pi Edition software running on the inside. I guess what I'm thinking of is like open source versus not as open source. Like what about that? What about creative? You know, how kids or anyone really can work in kind of with the open source aspects of this. What kind of are they going to run into if they go down that road?
What I love about the community that's come up around here, things like the Minecraft Raspberry Pi Edition are Creative Commons, and that's, you know, very much in our line. We want to make sure that the standard tools, especially for these educational purposes, are available to everyone without sort of barriers. I think around the Raspberry Pi, a lot of the content that is out there is all under Creative Commons license. And so our philosophy is definitely, let's do whatever we can to make sure that we're maximizing access to as many people as possible. And so, you know, as much as possible, we like things to be fully open and fair at the same time.
Right on. Kids can create. I mean, I know that within the Minecraft story mode, there are elements of it that are more open world sort of things. Like, why don't you come up with something on your own and create something? Is it possible for kids who are creating with these to share their experiences with other Piper users? Any plans for some sort of like a sharing community of sorts, so that, you know, it is what it is out of the box, but then it can be opened up and expanded to a whole host of what everybody else is doing with it? Yeah,
we love when you see our social media. If you go on Twitter, for example, I think our handle is Start With Piper. We love to see people sharing what they've built, whether it's physically or inside the game. You know, using something like Raspberry Pi Minecraft, kids can do what they're used to, which is creating their ideas in 3D little blocks. And so that's always been a core part of that software. But what's really exciting is when they start to envision 3D combined with some circuit. A good exercise if you have children that are playing Minecraft frequently is to ask them to show you what they're creating in their houses. You know, I was really surprised to see, one 9-year-old had this elaborate treasure chest that detected when her friends came in the virtual world, and the floor would kind of drop out. There'd be some lava. It was booby-trapped. But that's showing a real fluency of computational fluency. This is conditional logic. This is, definitely the level that we wanted to sort of embody, for our kids. And so this kind of gets to this whole language of creative computing that we see that, instead of math and English, which we all agree is really important in schools, the new language of the future is imbued with computing. And so we think that, creative computing technology is sort of the next second language, let's say. And so I think these tools are, like I mentioned with this story of the 9-year-old and demonstrating the booby-trapped treasure chest, that fluency is what we're trying to amplify.
Yeah, the development of their attention to logic.
Yes.
And these are all skills that will only increase in necessity in just the real world, the workplace. As they grow up, it's going to be more and more important. Obviously, they're going to see a whole lot of this proliferation of AI. We're at the beginning of that right now. I don't know how or if or when that comes into play with the Piper, but I mean, that's another skill that could potentially be something to learn from as well.
Well, I think what we're seeing is, the jobs of the future, we don't even know exactly what they're going to be. We just know that those jobs are going to be very different from what they are right now. So I think the education system is trying to adapt at the moment, and so our part in this is to sort of make our statements about what we think are important. AI, robotics, automation are important trends that we know are going to be part of the future workforce. So what we're trying to do is to just expose the fundamentals, right now at the earliest age possible, so that those ideas aren't so abstract. The robots are not coming to get us. We need to program them
as much as we keep thinking that they're going to.
Yeah. We're not quite there yet, and we certainly need folks to program them who have that fluency that I'm talking about.
Sure.
So we'll bring about that future faster if we have more kids having experiences like Piper and things like that. And then in that process, I think we'll have a deeper understanding about what does AI mean for the future.
Sure.
I'm really excited about that as the future of if you think about the economy and sort of what we need. We need innovators who understand technology, whether it's in the medical domain, for example, where I did things like prosthetics. That's a great example of if you have more diverse creators thinking about those problems and having that fluency from an early age, we're going to see much more creative solutions to problems faster. And I think that's important for just us as a society. Yes.
Absolutely. How do you think schools are doing with computer science? I mean, I know it's come a long way, and it's vastly different from when I was a kid, and had some computer in the classroom, and all it really did was play Oregon Trail, or I can't really think of very many instructive, and definitely not in this sense, ways that teachers back then were trying to educate us around what the computer could be and everything. Have schools kind of caught up? Do you think there are some places where they're falling behind? Are they not paying enough attention to it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the U.S. schools are catching up in that. I think we all agree that this is an important thing to have kids exposed to computer science. I think where we're still have a lot of work to do is how that actually gets put in the fabric of the daily sort of school system. It's still somewhat optional, at least in the U.S. Other countries, it's not optional. So I think, what's really important is actually the teachers is what we found was one of the limiting factors, is that you have a workforce of teachers right now who maybe don't have any background in programming. They also maybe aren't as confident to dive in. And so part of the Piper Kit 2 and the classroom, Piper Classroom we call it, which is the hardware plus all of the other things we think educators need. Part of what we're doing there is addressing the root cause of what we think is blocking, say, computer science in schools, which is, let's go in there, let's make this turnkey so that a teacher, regardless of what background they're coming from, we already know, any kid can build their own computer and program it. So why not bring that up to the next level and have any teacher be able to teach confidently skills like computer science? And so, part of our approach here is, give teachers that same experience, but not just computer science, give them the whole picture of creative computing, physical, electrical programming in context, so it's not abstract. And then we're seeing great results now in U.S. schools. We're in about 600 pilots right now with the Piper Classroom kits, and I think this is a kind of approach we encourage others to jump into.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that you've also been involved in hackathons with Piper. How has that kind of materialized? What does that look like?
Yeah, what's great is once you've gone through what I consider the boot camp of Piper, the building, the story mode, teachers who want to give these open-ended problem solving sessions, have these hackathons or whatever they you want to call it, was basically a session where we come up with a problem and get in a room and then make solutions to those problems. So what's great about Piper is that the same parts that you use in that kit, for example, the Raspberry Pi, can be removed and then put into solution that senses your air quality, right, or senses the temperature and humidity for a scientific problem that someone's facing. So these hackathons are things we're seeing pop up more and more, and they're a good reflection that we're getting to that creative fluency that's all part of our mission.
Yeah,
empowering kids.
Yeah, right on. One thing just occurred to me when we were talking a little bit about, kind of the classroom and technology and how that, how schools are doing around this. I realized that a lot of times the hurdle to overcome kind of lies in the hands of parents who maybe to some degrees are thinking of computer science in terms of that tablet screen or that very passive kind of experience, screen devices that kind of silo the user away from learning. It becomes this kind of passive thing. And I do think that something like Piper helps to bridge that divide. But how do you think parents can be better involved or better understand kind of the complicated scenario that we're in right now, where technology isn't one thing, it can be many things, yet parents will be resistant to it because it is technology. You know what I mean? I don't know if
we see a lot of parents who engage with us. They're coming from a world of let's say iPads in the home that are primarily being used to consume content. For example, classic thing is my kids watching YouTube videos of Minecraft. When they're not playing Minecraft, they're watching hours of YouTube there. So I think this was a reality that we were seeing as we sort of went into homes and talked with parents. We didn't think a solution of no screens is the right one. I think coexisting, and Piper was meant to be sort of, let's take the screen time but make it valuable, make it educational. And so for parents, I think you sat down with your 9-year-old Lucy and built the kit together. Those are the kind of experiences that we like to encourage for the parents to get familiar themselves with the foundations. Piper is as much for the parents around the kids as they are for the kids themselves. So I think that's an important next step is parents could buy a Piper today and build it, and I think that becomes an important attitude change for how technology can be for their kids, which it's about creation in addition to consumption.
Sure. Yeah, although they will always also enjoy sitting down with YouTube and watching somebody else play, but giving them the opportunity to get excited about being interacting as well, so that isn't always just the knee-jerk kind of go-to place when it comes to technology, creating more options. And I know that having the Piper in our house has definitely created that. They want to turn to that thing instead of maybe asking for a tablet or whatever to watch something passively. You also advocate for creative computing, which is kind of what we're talking about here, right? Like creative computing is really just all of these pieces coming together so that someone can feel empowered to take charge and create. You've done a lot of work in this field, and I know that you've done, some of your talks have kind of focused on this, but just to kind of like round us out, talk about the importance of that and kind of what you envision that turning, like the Piper kind of turning into with that in mind. Yeah,
well, I think, computation, computer science, we talked a bit about electronics, the physical world. These are all ideas that fall under an umbrella I call creative computing, which is about not just the individual pieces, but all of them together being put forward in a way that you're solving you're creating things rather than consuming. And so what we're trying to do with Piper and all of our products is expose all of the elements, the anatomy of what we think is foundational, so that anyone who has an idea for a problem they want to solve can eventually build it themselves. And so that starts with things like being exposed to the Raspberry Pi and being able to be comfortable wiring sensors up directly and being comfortable with adding in programming. So I think the future of creating computing is exactly what we're doing now, which is showing that kids can do it, and probably if a kid can do it, anyone can do it. So we're really excited about that for sort of exposing the whole world to this.
Yeah, I love it. I love what you're doing. Playpiper.com is where people should go to kind of take a look at more. We didn't even talk about the accessories. You guys had an announcement a couple of months ago. New accessory kind of kits that follow the same aesthetic, right? Like that one of them is a game controller, and it's totally a game controller that you build made out of wood, but it's a game controller nonetheless.
Yeah. All our things follow the same DNA.
That's great.
You got hands-on, you got to build it, you'll understand the foundation, and it's going to be things that your kids are really excited to jump in and do on their own. Yeah,
I know that my kids will enjoy at some point getting the game controller, even though my 5-year-old, maybe we didn't talk about this during the episode, but we talked about it prior to the show. Her and I had some really great time collaboratively controlling a character, because in the early stages of Piper, you are left with these wires that you've wired up, and in order to go forward, you have to touch the two colors together, and that moves your character forward. So it's a very interactive, but in a very different sort of way than I think we're all used to having a controller to move character. Instead, she's telling me, touch the blue wires so that it moves forward, while I touch these wires so that it jumps, so that we can get through this part. You know, and it was like, wow, we're both working together to control this character. I know at some point they're going to be like, but give me a controller. Let's build a controller instead.
But I love that collaborative, and that was definitely intentional on our part, is making sure that the experience was, something that actually sort of taught you a little bit about, solving problems is all about teamwork ultimately. You're not going to invent the future without working together, great as a team. And
absolutely,
those are those early sparks of that.
Yeah, and it taught her the lesson that on the technology side of things, when you press up, you're essentially touching these two contacts together. You know what I mean? And so that understanding of how it works under the hood is invaluable, and something that I never would have imagined I would have approached with my 5-year-old. But yet this is a concept that she gets now. Touch the contacts, the circuit is complete, the character moves forward, and she's 5 and she gets it.
That's incredible.
It's my daughter is incredible, but the Piper also, allows this for all children, and that's why I'm so excited that I got the chance to bring you here today. And
thank you, spokesperson for us.
Well, I've just had a lot of fun, and I love this where we're at right now with technology and how empowering that is for children. Really, for me, if I can do something to help my daughters realize that they have the ability to choose who they want to be, and to spark, create a spark in something like technology. They know their dad, goes to work and is on YouTube. Like, that's the thing they care about most as far as my job is concerned. But they know that I work with technology, but this allows them to have some ownership in it, and to really understand. And like you said, this is kind of the beginnings of, when they look back, they can be like, well, I remember when I created a computer when I was 9, and maybe that led to this. Maybe it didn't, but it was still a great experience. You know what I mean? They have the ability to make that decision.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how it turns out with your daughters, and that we have many more stories exactly like that.
Right on. Yeah. Joel Sadler, founder of Piper, of course, playpiper.com. How much is the kit? Is it $2.99 for kind of the starting point?
Yeah. And then for educators, it's you can go on our website, Piper Classroom Bundles, different pricing.
Okay. And well, then I'm gonna have to throw my school towards the website and have them take a look, because this fits in. It's a Montessori school, and it's like all hands on.
All hands on, yeah.
It's like 100% in line with their mission. So, Joel, thank you so much for coming up, and I know you drove up from San Francisco in all the rain and everything. Thank you for
my pleasure.
Battling the elements.
Anytime for a Piper parent.
Right on. Yeah. Cool. This has been a lot of fun talking with Joel. We talk with a lot of really amazing people on this show each and every week, and you can check it out by going to twit.tv/TRI for Triangulation. Go there and you will find all of our episodes, more than 384 of them. We've got quite a few interviews, so if you haven't gone through the list, you can find so many awesome names and get caught up. We do record live every Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 1930 UTC. You can always watch us live if you like, twit.tv/live. But you probably just want to be subscribed to the podcast. And again, that's twit.tv/TRI for all of the information to subscribe. I'm Jason Howell. Thanks to our producer, Anthony, for setting this all up and making this go so seamlessly. And thanks to you for watching. We'll see you next week on Triangulation. Bye, everybody.